Thank you. We're on. Good evening. Welcome to the December 19th, 2022 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. At this time, I'll ask that you all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Item 3 on the agenda tonight is the consent docket. Is there recommended action on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second. With a motion and a second, please vote. With the vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. I don't think I have anyone signed up for items not scheduled for public hearing. So that will drop us down to the actual public hearings. First up, item 6A. Pursuant to 11 OS 22-112 and 11 OS 22-112.4, the Stillwater City Council will conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure located at 2110 West Sherwood, Stillwater, Oklahoma, and owned by Marie Odette Saxon is dilapidated as defined in 11 OS 22-112C and abandoned as defined in 11 OS 22-112.4E. The City Council shall make a determination as to whether said building is dilapidated and or abandoned as defined by the reference statutes, and whether to order the abatement and removal of said structure and the assessment of all associated costs thereof to the owner of said property. And we have Councilor Beth Ann Childs here to help us with this item.
Thank you, Mayor. I am here with Paul Boston, who is one of our code officers, and as you know, I work very closely with the code officers and the legal department in order to address many of these structures. This particular location is at 2110 West Sherwood. The owner is Marie Saxon. It's important for the council to know that we did provide notice, the 10-day notice in accordance with the state statute. We sent it to her residence in Stillwater in addition to this particular residence, just to make sure it was all copacetic. The other thing that we did is the written official record that you all were provided with that documents and demonstrates the photographs, the issues with the residents, all of the action that has previously been taken by code enforcement as well as the police department and other entities within the city of Stillwater. It was FedEx to her, and she should have received it on Saturday, but we have attempted to make contact with her, and before the meeting today, I came down a few minutes early and asked her. I don't believe that she is here. So I will ask our code enforcement officer just to show you a few photographs of this, and as we go through on the PowerPoint, and we are asking that as a result of the condition of the structure and the fact that she has not gotten back with us, that you go ahead and approve the resolution.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
As the council advised, this little house sits in 2110 West Sherwood, which is in the Westwood Overlay District. And it's been empty for at least the 10 years I've been in code enforcement. There's been nobody trying to reside in it. And as you can see in these pictures, there has a little attached carport that comes in front of the house, and it's just basically going to fall off sooner or later. As you can see in the photographs up on that top left, the whole corner of this support's rotting out. The sides have rot in them. The house itself is starting to deteriorate. The roof, I just recently went by a week ago or so, and the shingles around several of the vents are coming loose, and it's starting to shed shingles off of it, which means water is going to get into the structure. The little back porch on the back side of the house is that bottom right photo. You can see that it's also starting to rot out. Basically, over the 10 years I dealt with this structure, the owners have done nothing to it unless I've ordered it. There's some history in the packets that I think out of the 10 years I've worked in code, I've sent orders, maybe 8 out of those 10 years. to mow it, to keep it clean. We've had to do at least one forced abatement. We have sent citations on the house, which were paid, and no improvements have been made. So it just, I've never heard from the owners. They've never contacted me. We just have this little house that's in a state of disrepair and falling down, which doesn't seem to be attended to by any of the owners of the family.
Counselors, any questions? Seems like a fairly clear-cut case on this one.
Yeah, I have a question, just that sort of covers all of them we're going to talk about today. There's a 90-day period where they have to respond and deal with the issues. Is that something that comes out of our city codes, I assume?
No, actually, when we initially began this process a couple of years ago, we talked about the importance, particularly with structures like this, to provide an opportunity for the homeowners to remedy the structures, and 90 days was the amount of time before the city manager can go ahead and take action to get it torn down, and we just felt like that was a reasonable period of time.
So that's just a time period that was chosen by staff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And then if you would, please, Mayor, open the public hearing and see if there are any comments.
Thank you for reminding me to do that. This time I will open the public hearing on item 6A. Is there anyone here signed up to speak on the item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Beth Ann, your recommendation to us is to approve the resolution declaring it dilapidated?
Yes, sir, it is.
Thank you so much. That item is on the agenda a few items down, so we'll take a vote at that time. That takes us to item 6B on public hearings. Pursuant to 11 OS Section 22-112 and 11 OS Section 22-112.4, the Stillwater City Council will conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure located at 638 East 14th Avenue, Stillwater, Oklahoma, and owned by David and Brenda Sorensen is dilapidated as defined in 11 OS Section 22-112C and abandoned as defined in 11 OS Section 22-112.4E. The City Council shall make a determination as to whether said building is dilapidated and or abandoned as defined by the reference statutes, and whether to order abatement and removal of said structure and the assessment of all associated costs thereof to the owner of said property. Ms. Childs.
Thank you, Mayor. You will note that Mr. Sorensen is present this evening. He and I had a few minutes to visit. Of course, the entire purpose behind our code process is to achieve compliance. And we had an opportunity to visit before we got started today. He has already entered into a contract with a licensed electrician to the tune of $8,500 to begin electrical work to the home. He's made a number of improvements since he received the notice on Saturday. In fact, he's already ordered the steel so that he can put a steel roof on the residence. A great deal of the siding and some of the windows that are identified here have already been addressed. Although you'll certainly want to open the public hearing and see if he has any additional comments. He did show us photographs of the front of the structure where all of the brush has been cleared up. He's made contact with city officials. They're going to come pick up quite a bit of this. So he's made a lot of progress in about 48 hours worth of time. So based upon that, the recommendation of staff would be to table this or the public hearing as well as the resolution to January 23rd.
So your recommendation is to table the public hearing and the resolution to the 23rd?
Yes, sir, it is.
Councilors, any questions?
Does Mr. Sorensen want to speak to us? And if so, we need to open the public hearing, I presume.
I was going to say, can we take?
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to open the public hearing. He can
Take
provide
comment
public
from the owner.
comment if you.
Mr. Sorensen, if you have additional comments, we're happy to hear them. If you're okay with what's been said so far, that's up to you. Thank you. What was your recommended time frame for continuing?
I believe January 23rd, and if you could pass both to a date certain, that way we don't have to republish.
Yes. Councilors, is there recommended action on the staff's recommendation?
I move we postpone item 6C, or 6B
Excuse me, 6.
rather, to January 23rd.
We'll postpone. There's a motion to postpone the public hearing and the resolution regarding item 6B to January 23rd. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, item 6B will be continued to January 23rd. Item 6C on our agenda tonight, pursuant to 11 OS 22-112 and 11 OS 22-112.4, the Stillwater City Council will conduct a hearing to determine whether the structure located at 3033 East Peachtree Avenue, Stillwater, Oklahoma, owned by Kelsey Humphrey, personal representative of the estate of David L. Humphrey, is dilapidated and as defined in 11 OS Section 22-112C and abandoned as defined as in 11 OS Section 22-112.4E. The City Council shall make a determination as to whether said building is dilapidated and or abandoned as defined by the reference statutes and whether to order the abatement and removal of said structure and the assessment of all associated costs thereof to the owner of said property. Ms. Childs.
Thank you, Mayor. On Friday, I received a phone call from Scott Thomas, and he indicated that he and his partners were representing the estate of David Humphrey. This has dragged on probably a little longer than anybody would really have liked, primarily because there was some confusion with the estate. The ex-wife was originally appointed executor, and then I guess as they got into it, they discovered that he actually died intestate, and so it had to go through the probate process. They do have a personal representative. Apparently, there are several other parcels that were owned by the estate. Mr. Thomas indicated that he would get in contact with a personal representative. I sent them a copy of the packet. He requested that it be continued until January the 23rd, which is really about the next time that you would want to hear these types of actions. I indicated that I would pass on that request and told him that I wouldn't have an objection to making that recommendation so long as he got with his client and began the process of significantly addressing the issues at this location.
Thank you, Beth Ann. Have we seen this one here before?
You have
We
not.
haven't had this one yet. Okay.
No, sir.
Counselors, further questions for council? So it's your recommendation on this item that we do the same, postpone both the hearing and the resolution to January 23rd?
Yes, sir, it is.
Counselor, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue item 6C, both the public hearing and the resolution, to January 23rd. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, item C is continued to January 23rd, 2023. Item 6D on our agenda. Pursuant to 50 OS Section 1 and following, Section 11 OS Section 22-121, Section 18.6. You guys got a lot of code sections.
It does, I'm sorry.
I'm going to start over on 6D. Pursuant to 50 OS Section 1 and following, 11 OS Section 22-121, Sections 18-64 through 18-74 of the Stillwater Code of Ordinances, and the Development Engineering Codes of the City of Stillwater, including Chapter 35, Stormwater Quality and Management of the Stillwater Code of Ordinances, and the Stillwater City Council will conduct a hearing to determine whether the property located at 1600 East 16th Avenue, Stillwater, Oklahoma, constitutes a public nuisance as set forth in the statutory and code references identified above. The City Council shall make a determination as to whether this property constitutes a public nuisance as defined by the reference statutes and codes, and whether to order the abatement of the property and the assessment of all associated costs thereof to the owner of said property. Ms. Childs.
This is a little bit different, as the mayor noted. We have not utilized our new-ish code enforcement policy or practice to address issues like this. This is actually a subdivision. You all were provided with a copy of the packet that was in the midst of development when it immediately ceased. Back in August of 21, our floodplain manager was engaged as a result, I believe, of a citizen complaint, and went out there and did several site inspections and notified the developers that there were a number of issues particularly with regard to stormwater runoff and compliance with the city codes pertaining to stormwater and flood management. He did a very detailed report. It's my understanding, although I didn't put a copy of the citation in here, that a citation was issued. A few months ago, I was contacted by code enforcement, and they requested that we run it through this process. So we began assembling the information that was previously provided to you. This case is a little bit different, not only because it's not a dilapidated structure, obviously, in the true sense of the word, but we're utilizing the nuisance abatement process set forth in state statute as well as addressed in our code. Now, the stormwater provisions are obviously going to be a key part of that. So what I did was we provided notice not just to the entity that was located in the records of the Payne County Treasurer and Assessor, but also I usually, if there's an LLC, I will go to the Secretary of State website and provide notice to their registered entity. I also noted that there was a mortgage from Bank First, so I provided them notice. I also FedExed copies of the written official record. I received a call on Friday afternoon from Scott Thomas, who indicated to me that he believed his partner, Micah Sexton, was going to be representing Silverton Estates. I actually, frankly, took that as a positive because we've had a lot of difficulty. Code enforcement also has had a lot of difficulty getting this particular representatives of this particular entity to respond. They requested that this be passed until February. They told me that their client hadn't been notified, although of course we've got the certified mailing records to substantiate it. They were actually notified by their mortgage company of this particular issue. So I do believe that there is an individual that is here that would like to speak on this particular issue. However, because of the fact that I think it's important for the council to preserve the right to due process, and because they had just retained counsel, and I believe my hope is that council will be very instrumental in addressing these. I provided them with a copy of the packet. I did advise Mr. Thomas that we had received a lot of complaints about this, and this was something that needed to be addressed immediately. He called and left me a message this morning and assured me that would be the case. So you might want to go ahead and open the public hearing and see if there are any comments that individuals would like to make. I do realize that this has dragged on probably longer than the neighbors would have liked. And then just table my recommendation would be to table the public hearing after you hear some comments, as well as the resolution to the January 23rd date. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
If we were to go ahead and proceed on this, they would still have 90 days to mitigate, correct?
They would, but this is my concern with that, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to respond to that. I don't like to give entities or individuals that are represented by counsel any opportunity to make an allegation of failure of due process. And so I believe that they should be given an opportunity to appear and address these. And I understand.
It is on the agenda tonight.
It is. It absolutely is. And they understand that I'm not the decision maker. I'm only the recommending body. But I'm only the recommending entity, as it were. But I feel like it's important to give them the opportunity to address these. And frankly, I don't know that much would get done between now and January the 23rd.
But you said February, I thought.
Oh, I'm sorry if I did. I misspoke. January 23rd.
Beth Ann, this has been going on since August 2021, and I guess I'm hearing two things. One is that we haven't heard anything, or it's been really hard to get a hold of them until now. And at the same time, this is different than a dilapidated building in the fact that we haven't gone through this process before. So I'm understanding that we probably need to follow the process that way. But my concern is, once again, we've had over a year of trying to get a hold of individuals, and now at the 7th hour, we're here, they speak up, so.
And if I could address that, if you don't mind, I think that I view this as being a little less unusual, because so many times when we deal with these types of actions, you may recall, we don't hear from the entity. And Mr. Hayes would be a great example, Mr. Amon. Virtually every entity or person that you all have dealt with, when the packet was presented to council, that tends to generate a response.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the reasons why I felt a little bit comfortable making the recommendation, because and in fairness, I do believe that we've made a considerable amount of progress, even though it is clearly the 11th hour. I think that the objective is clearly compliance.
Yeah.
Another significant difference here is that if you have a dilapidated building, it's an eyesore in the neighborhood, and the neighbors don't like it. But in this case, we have neighbors who are directly affected by this runoff, that the longer we wait to do something, the longer they're dealing with this.
That's true. I will let you know that I did speak with one of the neighbors today, and he and I had a dialogue about some of the injuries to the property. I suggested that as a part of the overall resolution, because not only do we want the issue resolved, if they need to be made whole as a result of the runoff, that should definitely be part of the conversation. And so I think that there's value also in moving it to January, so that I can communicate, look, these are all the things that have been done. So if it's sod or dirt work or any of those sorts of things, perhaps we can, through this process, encourage them to make remediation. Now, the individual that will speak tonight, he will tell you that he has done all of the work himself. I think that he told me he'd done about 30 hours worth of work in order to address the silt and the runoff. So that really did factor into this as well.
I mean, my understanding with my understanding with environmental issues like this with runoff, that there are in some cases, emergency actions that can be taken to stop the actual injury that's occurring. Is there anything within our code or within the state code that allows us to do something without having to go through this due process? I mean, we're seeing, as Councilor Clark noted, we're seeing injury happen currently, and it is different than a dilapidated structure. And so the idea of having to wait for the lawyers to argue it through while this is occurring seems contrary to public policy in general, and probably contrary to most environmental remediation law. Is there not anything else we can do about this?
There may be, and if the council in the future would prefer to go about handling these types of issues in a different way, we absolutely can do that. This just seemed like, because we've gone through the process, that we thought this might be a very good way to go about doing that. Typically, when you're talking about immediate remediation, that is going to pertain, and I understand that silt creates an issue, but typically when you're going to take emergency type action, it's going to be like with an overflow for the sanitary sewer system, or something that's going to get the Department of Environmental Quality involved, a fish kill, those sorts of things. But I will definitely look into it and see if we can't move through the process more quickly.
Councilors, further questions? Procedurally, I can open the public hearing, hear public comment, and then continue it without closing it?
Yes, I
Is that
think
what you're
that's
suggesting?
fine.
We good on that? Okay.
Yep.
I don't think we've done that before. All right. Well, at this time, I will open the public hearing on this matter, because we do have a couple of folks signed up to speak. First up is Ray Bernard.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I'm the guy she talked to. Don't hold it up on my account. I'm not trying to work anything out on damages, right?
Okay.
I take my tractor and I drag the silt out. I got about 30 hours invested, but is your 89-page report, is it numbered for you? If I reference a page number, can you turn to it?
I think so.
Try.
Not individually numbered, no.
All right. Well, page 64 is a letter from Zach after he talked to Ghost and Associates in February, last February.
Okay.
Had the report done on this runoff, and
I think
his
this
last.
is Exhibit 12, just for,
Pardon me?
in our packet, it's labeled as Exhibit 12. Oh, no, that's a construction site.
It's just
inspection.
part of the written official record, and your part.
I just want to make sure we're all looking at the same thing.
It's like a half dozen pages from the end.
Yeah,
roughly.
dated August 5th.
Oh, it's not page 64.
Well, it might be in the PDF. I don't have the,
Yeah. Zach.
I didn't have all these. It's just referred to as Exhibit B in your agenda. But anyway, I'll move on to make it
Go
quick.
ahead.
They had Ghost make a survey, make an engineering study, and Zach told you, or told Silverton Estates and city staff that this plan needs to be implemented immediately. That was last February. He also, in that, he drew some pictures in there of the existing detention. And according to his math, it's 1/4 of what it should be. Need to be roughly 40,000 cubic feet, and it's 11,000 cubic feet. That was, again, was last February. If the first thing I copied was page 44, which was just his notes on his inspections, right? Starting back in March. And I don't know if you've had time to look at them, but all the problems were always there. Now, it's interesting to note that in October, last October, 2021, not 22, inactive site, partially stabilized, routine inspection stopped. That's when all enforcement stopped. They didn't go back every day, they didn't go back every week, they didn't go back every month to see are these required improvements being done, until I rattled his chain again last summer and gave him ample time, and then I've had some conversations with Norm lately about it. But city code provides that you can fine these people $500 a day plus costs. Every day is a separate offense. This could have gone on for 2 years. And to say that the people didn't know, or they haven't, one of these visits, Lindsay was on site. So they can't say there wasn't notice. She was there and met with them. City staff was there. They all had a big hoorah down there. She also, the council here says, yeah, we know they've served notice. They just don't respond. They don't respond to your letters. They don't respond to orders to complete. So I don't want you to table it. I want you to give them their 90 days, but at best that means something could happen March if the city was ready to implement the abatement procedures the very next day.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I had a lot of notes, but I don't want to go through them all. It's well documented.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Also-
Appreciate you being here.
Anybody that wants to speak, since it is a public hearing, can't they? They don't actually have to sign up.
They do
for a
need to
public
sign
hearing?
up.
Even for a public hearing?
Yes,
Okay.
but they can, if there's somebody else here. I'm happy to take another form. I do have Mr. Tom Bradley also signed up to speak. As he's coming up, if anybody else would like to speak on the issue,
Thank you, Mayor and
you
Councilors.
see Patty.
My apologies for looking like I came from the farm field, but I wasn't anticipating speaking tonight until I heard your staff attorney talk about this. As Mr. Bernard has well pointed out, this has been going on for way too long, okay? And the city has had the opportunity numerous times to correct the problem, and they've failed to. And now your staff attorney is asking that this be delayed another 90 days. Move forward on it, and if they make progress and get it done, then you can pull it, change your decision at that point. But let's quit kicking this can down the road. Start citing them every day, and let's get this thing down the road. You know, it's time that the council take action and move forward. With that, thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate you being here. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the item? All right, well, I'll leave the public hearing, I'll leave the public hearing open at this time. We've heard council's recommendation around postponing or tabling the item or continuing the hearing to January 23rd, and I would just point out that's not necessarily Beth Ann's idea, but the fact that it's been requested by the opposing counsel or by the owner's counsel here, and I will, as one of those attorney types, say that there is the concern that I think she's expressed around the idea of if we actually take action here on a resolution and say, well, we'll just wait 90 days and you can go ahead and fix it. The problem I think we'd run into potentially is a challenge to the order itself, which will actually end up delaying our ability to enforce it even longer than if we wait to January 23rd and say, because we don't have to give them 90 days to abate. That is not a statutory period, right? We can make that time frame shorter, and I think hopefully if the owners and their counsel are watching the meeting tonight, will understand that the council does not seem, at least in my estimation, personally speaking for me, not interested in delaying this item in any 90-day time frame. That they need to be here on the next hearing and they need to be ready to go and it needs to get fixed. My sole concern with not tabling it or not continuing the hearing tonight would be that due process challenge, which will actually add time to this problem and delay our ability to enforce it. And I would rather that we say, let's continue it to January 23rd. We don't have to wait 90 days to get it enforced at that point if we pass the resolution then. But it does avoid the problem of us ending up in a process problem with lawyers now, arguing about due process rather than actually getting the issue fixed. So I think in the long run, the continuation gets this problem fixed faster because, as Beth Ann said, council are involved, and so there's no reason for us to have to wait any longer once they show up and come to the hearing. So I would be of the mind that we go ahead and continue it.
All right, well, if we're going to do that, and it comes back to us in a month, I would like to see it have 60 days to mitigate instead of 90.
I'd argue for 30.
30 days.
I mean,
All right.
I think it's
60 or
absolutely
less.
clear, and if I was one of these neighbors, I would be standing up here saying exactly the same things they're saying, probably even more forcefully. And I think this is a problem. It's a huge problem. And it should have been taken care of before this. It should not be. It should not be where it is now. And I think, there's probably a lot of places that we can talk about needing to fix the process here because this is certainly way too many. Looking at a record where you've got letters from last July and at least last July, if not before that, saying this needs to get fixed, and we're 18 months later and it's not fixed. That is a real problem. But I want to move forward in the way that I think is going to actually advance the solution here the fastest, and I think that truly is, although it doesn't sound like it, I think that truly is continuing the hearing so that we can get everybody here on the 23rd and shorten the response time from there. So I will move to that effect that we table item 6D, continue the hearing to January 23rd, 2023, along with the public hearing and the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue the item. Please vote. Items continuance approved with a vote of 5-0.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
in the meantime, I'm dismayed about how long this has taken as well. Several conversations with both Chief Bradley and Mr. Bernard. We'll come up with a plan that we can deploy quickly in the meantime.
I think that would be helpful. I think it would also be helpful to do a little post-mortem on what in the world has taken so long with this one. So, Beth Ann, thank you for your work tonight. Appreciate it. All right. That moves us to item 7 on the agenda, which is general orders. 7A is consider approving an amendment to a contract with KSA for design and other professional services at the construction of a storage building and lean-to at Stillwater Regional Airport, CC-22-214. Mr. Pregal.
Good evening. Paul Pregal, Airport Director. On September 19th of 22, Council approved a budget amendment that funded an account for us to construct a storage building and a lean-to structure at our airport. And as part of this process, we are now needing to enter into design and professional services. Our engineer of record is KSA, and they've prepared a task order. And that task order in total is $83,315, which is everything from the design through bidding and construction administration of both of these structures. And so we're asking tonight for council to approve this task order. The funding is already in place in the project account, and I'm happy to answer any questions before my motion.
Councilors, any questions for Paul? What's your recommendation?
Motion to approve the KSA task order in the amount of $83,315 for professional services for the construction of a storage building and lean-to at Stillwater Regional Airport, and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents.
Thank you, Paul. Councilors?
I move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the item. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 5-0. Item 7B is consider authorizing the city manager to execute a task order under existing master services agreement with Ghost and Associates for a not-to-exceed fee of $65,000 for reasons that Candy is going to tell us about right now.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. I hope that my presentation pops up here soon. Let me get it opened. We were having technical difficulties earlier. Is that over? Okay. Okay, I am very excited to be talking to you all tonight about Block 34 project. The architecture and engineers design team is at about 65% complete, and the city has a commitment already to part of that work, which includes the demo, a relocation of a manhole that's in the center of the block, parking, sidewalks, and lighting. And because of these very generous donations and the community support we've had, the city staff are committed to providing a approach to this Block 34 and utilities that offers us a very sound and long-lasting infrastructure for this park. It's going to kind of be a crown jewel of Stillwater, and we want the area to match it. So we have asked Goes and Associates to do some evaluation. Goes and Associates are here. Stephen Goes and Katie Purdy are here, to help us evaluate what needs to be done, and especially some of the improvements along Duncan Street, which we'd like to be a really nice connection between Block 34 and the community center. We've got some drainage problems we want them to look at. Also, Block 34 has a water feature that we need to look closer at because it will be draining to our sewer system, and we have a BOD problem already, so just some factors there that we want to look at. And then, of course, the roads in the area. Ninth Street is pretty good, but the other roads aren't so great. So they're going to be looking at 3 different options, kind of the bare minimum, the middle of the road, and the higher end, higher cost improvements for us. To accomplish this, we have an estimate from them that is, let me tell you first, this meets our effective services and accountable government and our place and mobility strategic priorities. And the estimate for the work from GOES will not exceed $65,000. We are asking for an additional $30,000 in design transition, and I'll tell you what that is. They want to bid this project in the summer, and usually a design for us takes at least 6 to 9 months. And in this case, we're still doing a study to tell us what we need to do. And so by the time we start, it will be probably late January. And instead of coming back at that time to get authorization, we would like approval from you all to get started on design for things that are not going to change, whichever option we pick. That way we don't delay our schedule. And we're asking for $30,000 for that, and then $5,000 for contingency to get this work started. GOES's work is going to take about a month for the evaluations, and we'll come back to you after that with our recommendations for what approach we take for the work, and ask for authorization for additional monies. Are there any questions?
Counselors, any questions? Candy, this is going to come out of the transportation fund.
Yes, our
and
new
this is
penny.
transportation.
Yes.
The streets. I mean, these definitely need to be done. There needs to be work done on these streets regardless. How many places are we moving them up, I guess is the question.
As in, where were they initially
Yeah,
on
I
the
mean, these
order?
weren't going to be done this year.
They were not on our, they were not on that list, and right now, I think our pavement management annual plan maybe only goes out to this year. We haven't been able to get to you all this year for the pavement management plan, so I can't answer that specifically, but it's many steps.
Yeah.
Because we weren't even thinking about this, really.
So it is we're talking about moving them a little higher on the priority list than they normally would be to spend transportation
Yes.
funds on.
Yes.
But given that we're doing work in the area on Block 34 and trying to, they would have to be redone as part of the
Eventually,
project,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, it makes sense to, as a factor to change their positioning from that
Yes.
standpoint.
And some of the scores on the roads, especially 8th, I think on the IMS scores was about a 50, and that's a pretty low score. So it is needed.
It's pretty good for most of ours.
Yeah. We also,
Mayor, we had a meeting with the Transportation Advisory Group
Yep.
last week and talked to them about this very subject. And they are amenable to recommending to the council that those be moved to the top of the list if once a definite plan is in place that they can take a look at.
Okay. Okay.
I'm reminded when we were working with the form-based code group, one of the things that they mentioned to us was when you want people to invest in your city, when you want the private sector to invest in your city, you have to invest in your public spaces. And for us, that's our roads and infrastructure around this really special space that's being heavily invested in by the community. And I think it's so important to recognize their investment with some investment on our part.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the worst thing we want to happen is build this beautiful park and in 5 years have water leaks and have to go in and take care of that. So we want to do it right
The first time.
this
yeah.
year, yes.
Counselors, any further questions? What is your recommendation for us?
Our recommendation is for a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a task order under the existing master services agreement with Goes and Associates for a not to exceed fee of $65,000, to approve expenditures of $30,000 for design transition, and approve a budget amendment appropriating total expenditures of $100,000 to cover the alternatives phase, transition to design and contingency.
Counselors?
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the item. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 5-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I don't know that have we recognized Candy Starring for her new role at a public meeting yet?
I don't think we have.
Well, we're very happy to have you,
Yes.
and I don't know the correct proper title. Director of Engineering Services, what is the?
Director, yes, very
Director
proud of
of
that. Very
Yes.
happy to be working with the group of people that I get to work with every day.
We're happy to have you, and we're
Thank you all.
excited to have you in the role.
And she has hit the ground running.
You can tell. All right, item 7C, presentation of communications plan, media and alerts from Dawn Jones.
If I can get this out a little bit. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. The City of Stillwater Communications Plan Media and Alerts was developed by the Emergency Management, Police, Fire, and Communication Departments to provide relevant, accurate information in a timely manner to Stillwater residents, patrons, stakeholders, and media. It speaks to the city's commitment for transparent, effective, and direct communications. We have been following the criteria for release and/or alerts included on page 2 throughout the past several months and continue to adapt the plan and processes as needed to serve our community. Let me go to that real quick. And you have it in front of you. So the criteria that we've been following, whether we send out an alert or a release, is significant number of emergency personnel and/or vehicles responding to the situation,
emergency event that affects others who are not immediately involved, if it disrupts flow of traffic, if we need to evacuate or we need people to avoid an area, and or an abnormal incident that could generate community concern and or inquiry. So something that's not normal for Stillwater. So if it even meets one of those, then we send out an alert or release, just depending upon the situation. The plan is considered a fluid framework to determine necessary messaging regarding an important situation, emergency, or crisis. To date, we have not received any complaints or concerns from the media regarding our process of communications since we have been following it. Tonight, I have Rob Hill, Director of Emergency Management, here with me. Lieutenant TJ Lau also helped develop this. He could not be here tonight. He's our police PIO. But throughout the past several months, there have been several people that have been a part of this process. Fire Marshal Thomas Tharp, both chiefs have been very involved, very helpful. Hit the ground running with this. I would greatly appreciate Police Chief Watts for his leadership, Fire Chief Essery, and also our assistant chiefs, City Manager McNichol, and of course, Deputy City Manager Reams. Do you have any questions or thoughts?
Thank you, Don. Councilors?
To be clear, this was done sort of in response to the media's concern, at least partially, when we have the new radios and they're encrypted, about not being able to get information as quickly as they once did. And so this was part of what was done in response to that. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am. So what we have done is, it's a communications plan that we've been building. So there is a crisis component. This is the media and alerts component. So think of several different buckets, and we're building it out because there wasn't one in place. There is a crisis plan in place that Rob Hill and I have met about, and also with Paul Pregel to address the airport, because that actually wasn't in that plan previously. So this is one component of an overall communications plan, but it absolutely received priority attention so that we could be prepared and ready to go when the rollout of the radio encryption occurred. So we've been practicing this. Every one of these criteria that we have listed here are because we've been living it. We don't know what we don't know. So as we've been going through the different situations, we've been building and adapting this.
Thank you.
I think over the last year, I've been impressed with the messaging, especially putting TJ Lau in that position. I think you guys all work very well together, and it speaks highly when there hasn't been any complaints or anyone concerned about it. So you're going in the right direction, and I think you have filled in places that, it will continue to evolve as you do this, I'm sure, but I think you've got a good handle on it, and appreciate the messaging.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the comments that I've received about our communications have been more on the oversharing than undersharing, if that makes sense. And not oversharing, not that we wouldn't share things, but sometimes something coming out and seeming like something really important. Because when we post something, it's like, oh, hey, pay attention to this. And really some of those things, it seems like sometimes we go, well, do we really need to make a big deal out of it? Somebody got arrested or somebody, that sort of thing. But I think the plan seems to, with the criteria around what needs to be happening. I think the only reason we should be blasting social media as the city is when there is really something that people need to be paying attention to. Something's happening, an arrest or an incident that happens that's, like you said, somewhat more run of the mill. Unfortunately, that kind of stuff happens in any city. Doesn't necessarily need to be highlighted by being shared on all of our social media pages. And I think I know you guys have dealt with that as part of this policy and trying to figure that out. You feel like you've got a good balance there?
Yes, sir. In fact, we increased communications so much that then we had some who were concerned, oh my goodness, has the crime rate went up in Stillwater? Actually, no. Throughout the past several years, it has definitely not went up, and it has changed a little bit due to technology and how our world is ever changing. But our crime rate has not went up, and we live in a very safe community. But with the increase of communications, there were concerns with that. So, yes, sir.
Councilors, further comments or questions? Is this an item for approval, or is this Sorry, I'm not looking at the right
I
page.
think it's just for our information.
It's
It's
just
not
as
an
a-
action
Listed as
item.
a presentation on the
Yeah,
agenda.
That's right.
we had promised you that we'd bring this plan back.
And you have lived up to your promise.
So you mentioned that this is kind of one component of a larger, will we see additional presentations on on additional components, or will this be the only?
If you
presentation
request
of the-
presentations, we're here. Whatever you want to see, and we'll be happy to send you all every bit of it, and it'll also be on our website.
Yeah, I think for me, that transparency
Absolutely.
of the process is so very important for folks to understand the process that you're going through and the decision-making kind of framework that our city staff is going through, just to support, flexibility in that plan if it needs to change, and then just to make sure that as the radio system comes on board, that we are demonstrating that transparency and flexibility if that needs to be there too. So I do think that as you're developing, that was my other question is, will you have a formal kind of thought or process in place for evaluating? I know right now you're probably just like as it comes, right? But are you thinking, you'll review it annually with the group that's helped you develop it, or
Yes,
just to
ma'am.
kind of understand, make sure, put some policy in place for review to make sure that it's serving you all and the community in the way that it should?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And again, we'll be happy to present at any time, but what we do absolutely is a reflection of your leadership as well, so we'd be happy to present at any time, but we'll definitely get that to you.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you, Don.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
you being here. Appreciate your work.
Thank you so much.
And to Rob and
Yes.
everyone else who's been
Well
working on it.
done,
We appreciate it.
everyone.
Oh, we know. We're waiting for his cold weather broadcast this week. You're driving around Thursday morning? Okay. All right, that takes us to item 8 on the agenda, which is resolutions. First up is resolution number CC-2022-36. This is a resolution of the Stillwater City Council declaring the structure located at 2110 West Sherwood Avenue, Stillwater, Oklahoma, dilapidated and abandoned, and a public nuisance detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the general public and the community, and ordering the dilapidated structure to be torn down and removed pursuant to 11 OS Section 22-122. This is the
Only one we're doing.
first
This
one.
is the only one that
Yeah.
we were moving.
I was looking for the property owner name.
Saxon.
Saxon property
Yeah.
that we
Yes.
approved earlier. Questions, comments, or action on the resolution?
Move to adopt resolution CC 2022-36.
Second.
A motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. Resolution's adopted with a vote of 5-0. On items B, C, and D, we voted earlier to postpone these. Do we need separate vote on the resolution section of the agenda?
No, they were tabled with the public hearings to January 23rd.
Items B, C, and D will be tabled to January 23rd. Item 8E is Resolution CC-2022-40. This is a resolution of the Stillwater City Council adopting revisions to the Stillwater Regional Airport Car Rental Facility Regulations. And Mr. Priegel's going to explain that to us.
Good evening once again. In 2017, we adopted, we being the airport authority at the time, adopted the rental car regulations. As you all are aware, we have rental cars that provide service to our passengers. And over time, of course, these documents need to be reviewed and updated. There was an update that was done February 18th of 21. And recently, we've had a need for another update. And since we no longer have an authority, this matter comes straight that. This matter is reviewed by the advisory board and then is adopted by city council via a resolution. So you have a copy of the proposed regulations as revised and recommended by the advisory board that was met last Thursday. The just highlights, obviously one of the big changes throughout is we still refer to everything as the authority, and of course we made those changes, cleaned up quite a bit of just language that needed to be cleaned up, and then we added in the option for on-premise rental car facilities to service both airline passengers and non-airline passengers. There was a distinction in there that would not allow, say, for example, a citizen to come in and rent a car unless they were an airline passenger. So that allows that opportunity. And then trying to think if there was anything else. Really, a lot of it was just cleaning up some of the language. There was some reference to interim in there that were sporadic, and so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilors, any questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. Councilors, is there action on the resolution?
Motion to adopt resolution number CC-2022-40.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. Resolution is adopted with a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Paul. Item 9 is ordinances. On second read, we have ordinance 3512, an ordinance closing a portion of rights-of-way of South Duncan Street, east of Block 63, original town site of Stillwater, in addition to the city of Stillwater, Payne County, Oklahoma, near property addressed as 1202 South Duncan Street.
Motion to adopt ordinance number 3512.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Please vote. The ordinance is adopted with a vote of 5-0. On second read, we have ordinance 3517, an ordinance authorizing the extension of the lease term and the removal of one 2-megawatt diesel generation unit located at the water treatment plant from the lease agreement and operation of maintenance contract dated April 1st, 1979, providing for citizen-initiated referendum of said lease in accordance with Section 4-2 of the City Charter. Councilors.
Motion to adopt ordinance 3517.
Second.
A motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Please vote. Ordinance is adopted with a vote of 5-0. I am going to jump in the agenda down to item 12, if that's okay with everybody. I wonder if we could just move item 12 up above item 10 in future agendas. I'm not sure why appointments always end up at the very bottom. We will move to appointments. First up, we have a necessary appointment to the Planning Commission, a vacant seat that expires in July of 23. We have a couple different applicants, and I would like to nominate Riley Williams for the open seat on the Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Riley Williams is appointed to the Planning Commission. We appreciate your interest and willingness to serve on the Planning Commission. On the Stillwater Medical Center Authority, Dan Duncan's term is expiring and up for renewal. Dan has expressed an interest in serving again on the Stillwater Medical Center Authority. As I serve on the authority, I know that Mr. Duncan's service is very much appreciated and very helpful given his financial background, and I would make a motion to reappoint Mr. Duncan to the Medical Center Authority for another term.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Dan Duncan is appointed to another term on the Stillwater Medical Center Authority, and we appreciate his service in that regard. All right, that will take us back to item 10, I think. Is that 10? On the agenda, reports from officers and boards. Anything from the city attorney?
Nothing to report.
Mr. McNichol.
One items are many families will put presents under a live Christmas tree during the holiday season. We would suggest that you keep those trees well watered and any flames away from them. And Christmas, depending on how you count it, is about 5 days away. And people will be wanting to dispose of the tree once it's been used, so residents can bundle up their trees and place it on the curb to be picked up as part of the city's regular yard waste collection, free of charge. All decorations must be removed from the trees, and bundles must be less than 4 feet long, 18 inches across, and no more than 50 pounds.
All right. Thank you so much. It's sort of weird we're not to Christmas yet, and you're already telling us how to get rid of our Christmas trees, but that's timely because we're not going to have another meeting before Christmas. Vice Mayor?
Yes, this holiday season, the Stillwater Animal Welfare reminds those who are considering adding a furry friend to their family to adopt, not shop. If you would like to see what dogs and cats are in need of a good home, please stop by the Animal Welfare Building at 1710 South Main Street or follow Stillwater Animal Welfare on Facebook. The staff members post regular updates on Facebook about available animals, educational tips, and animal health guidance. They do a fabulous job.
I have it on good authority that there are many available pets.
Yes.
That would make wonderful Christmas presents for everyone else's family. Councilor Hawkins.
The Stillwater Fire Department encourages residents who live outside the city limits but within the Stillwater Fire Department's response area to purchase a rural fire service contract for 2023. These $100 contracts ensure that response fees for each fire incident on a contracted property will not exceed $2,000. All collected fees go toward training, rescue tools, and other fire equipment. Visit stillwater.org/fire to download the application.
Very important. Thank you. Councilor Jaloski.
We hope Stillwater residents and patrons will enjoy Merry Main Street events and festivities through December 24th. Check out the free carriage rides, the large dome north of the community center, holiday lights set to music at Chris Salmon Plaza, Santa and Sensitive Santa from the North Pole, and much more. Don't forget also to shop SUA and support local businesses for your holiday gifts and food. A list of holiday festivities and events can be found at stillwater.org and visit stillwater.org. I was in the dome this weekend doing chocolate with the community, and we had lots of visitors stepping in to see what we were doing in there. The carriage rides were going. It's just really it's a special part of our town during the holidays.
Good. We had over 100 people join us for Breakfast with Santa Saturday morning. So,
That's awesome.
Yep. And I have to do a shout out to the Shelf. It's a new food truck, cinnamon rolls and hot chocolate.
Wow.
And different types of cinnamon rolls. Gluten-free cinnamon rolls, any type. So, just saying. The Shelf.
Excellent.
And where do they park?
You know what? Look them up on
Follow
Facebook. I bet they'll tell us.
I was downtown on Saturday too, and in the afternoon, very busy shopping around. Ran into a former city councilor and a bunch of other folks that were down getting their Christmas shopping done. So a few more days left before Christmas, and we would certainly encourage everyone to get out and shop in Stillwater. Councilor Clark.
City offices will be closed for the holidays on Monday, December 26th and Monday, January 2. Trash and recycling will be collected on all holidays, but not yard waste. Be sure to set your carts out by 6 a.m. because collection routes may vary.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will let you know that if you'd like to get involved in our local government, we have an opening on the Board of Adjustment. The board consists of 5 members and is empowered by city code to conduct hearings and render decisions on matters of appeals, variances, and special exceptions to the zoning ordinances. The board is considered quasi-judicial in that its decisions can only be overturned by the district court. The term's for 3 years, and there's more information available, and you can apply at stillwater.org/citizenboards. We would really appreciate folks who are interested, certainly in city government at all, but in land use and all that sort of thing. The Board of Adjustment is a great place to serve. I have nothing else on the city council agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater City Council is now adjourned. At this time, I will call to order the December 19th, 2022 meeting of the Stillwater Utilities Authority. On the consent docket, is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and 3 seconds on the consent docket. Please vote.
Somebody's in a hurry to get out of here.
The consent docket is approved with a vote of 5-0. Are there new reports from the officers of the board? Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, hold on.
One quick item.
One quick item.
It's the last meeting before the holidays.
Yes.
I want to thank the council for your work, both as trustees and council people. Also want to thank our staff who make this place run every day. And we'll be thinking about them towards the end of the week when the weather gets cold.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And wish all those citizens out there Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
Merry Christmas to all. Is there, any other comments?
No, sir.
Before?
Thank you.
Sorry. Is there a motion to adjourn SUA?
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the SUA. Please vote. Left that part out. With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater Utilities Authority is adjourned, and that does conclude our meetings, not just for the evening, but for the year. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year to everyone in Stillwater.
Those of you stuck it out.